and that's very awkward. But I think with this particular position, taking on d4 is okay for black. Knight g4, bishop g5 looked a little weird to me. But I think here he's obviously going to gain time with his rook, but I don't think it's a real big deal. So we have a choice. F5 is usually a good square. The other squares, F4. F4 is interesting in this position. It is not a really great way for him to attack my queen. And it has squares to go to, but he can play bishop back to e3. So f5 or f4, it's kind of hard to decide. Although, you know, putting the bishop back on e3 doesn't seem that appealing for white. I'm threatening either. This way I'm threatening bishop g4. I'm not interfering with my bishop on c8. I thought he would do this. Now if I play queen c7, he plays knight b5 with tempo. So it looks like now I have to play queen b8, which is okay, I guess. Dude wants to play g3, that's okay too. That'll weaken his king side a bit, and I can play bishop g4 comfortably and move my queen to c8 or something. But anyway, the c3 Sicilian is it's probably the opening I have the worst score against of anything under the sun with the black pieces. I never found a system I was really fully happy with. I've tried almost everything. It's a very annoying opening. Here, h3, Amadan. White, not really doing anything, per se. Okay, now a6. And, well, b5, bishop b7 is good for my pieces. It does slightly weaken the dark squares. I don't think it's really significant here. His pieces are a bit awkward on the queen side. But I need to get my bishop developed without making too many weaknesses. I think a6, b5 is... a6, b5, you know, it's a little weakening, but you have to do something. And b5, b4, kind of a thematic minority attack, and could actually be quite dangerous. I talked about the bishop on g7 being ineffective, but I mean, this might be one of the circumstances where it actually becomes effective, believe it or not. And we're not doing rook d8 because f7 gets very tender in this kind of structure. I don't think the bishop c5 is a big deal, and I really want to kill his knight now. So you know, he could play a4 and it could come back to haunt me at some point, but now we've got to start thinking a bit, because he has bishop c5 in the event of some knight a5, bishop c5. I'm going to be losing a pawn on e7. As much as I'd like to play knight a5, I'm not really sure. It's interesting. There's some interesting moves. Maybe I could sack a pawn, or knight a5, bishop c5, knight takes b3, a b3, bishop e6. Maybe he sacks in exchange on e6. I don't know. But I'd like to keep it a little cleaner, a little simpler. So I'm going to play bishop b7 first and see what's up. If he plays knight d4, then I'm very happy to go knight a5. Even if I don't get his bishop, my knights are starting to jump into squares all over town, like c4, d5. I have ultimately really powerful threats on the long diagonal with the bishop on b7. Queen c1. He wants to trade dark squared bishops. Yeah, it looks weird. Still, we could play knight a5. We've got to do something, so I think I'm going to do it. If he goes bishop h6, I just trash his structure. Whoops, missed that, but that's okay. Don't mind sacking a pawn. I could play queen d8 too here. I just totally missed bishop f4. I have to admit it. First I'll take his bishop, and then we'll decide what to do. But I don't mind sacking a pawn on e7, and c8 is a pretty good square. But I guess I don't have to sack a pawn. I can play queen d8. So it's better to avoid unnecessary material investments. Now rook e8, I guess. We avoid bishop h6 trades. Black's slightly better now. We have two bishops. We have a solid structure. A little more king safety than white. Don't really want to trade. So, but white's very solid. You can see he's sort of consolidated his whole structure. It might come down to like we have to eventually let him trade. But let's try this. We're going like full Steinitzian style on him. Bishop f8. I don't want to trade, man. I don't want to trade bishops with you. And that double pawn could actually be fairly useful for black. So this is a Queen's Indian type of idea. Now he doesn't dare. That's a pretty weird move, queen f4. And then queen h4, threatening knight g5. If f6, knight, I don't know. I guess he goes there and he takes my bishop now. What am I going to do? I have to make a decision. We're getting very short of time. He didn't play it, and now I have e5. So it looks like black is good. And he's just playing for time here. Well, knight c5 ideas. I don't know where to put my queen. Very awkward. I don't really like white's game, but he has some counterplay on the c5 square. Rook d1. His pieces are kind of shut down. He could sack an exchange, but not really. No, not right away. Knight a5. I'm happy he went to a5, because I think his knight is now out of play. Now he can do the exchange sack, but still, I don't know. It looks a little crazy, because I'll be taking on f3. I don't think it's really good. He can try that. I'll probably play rook e6 and take on f3 or something. I don't believe in that, I mean for white. Okay, knight d2. And I guess I have to guard my my f7 pawn at some point. So we're getting awfully low on time. Bishop g7. He's starting knight e4. Amadan is fast, but I think it's mostly being very practical. I don't really believe in white's game here. What's this? How does that work? He has some knight takes d5. Knight g5. I don't see how he's going to get this discovery in. We have a minute left. We have queen a7 check in some positions. And I'm not buying this. This is like, I'm going to take with the queen. And maybe he has something here. Bishop takes f4. Yeah, I have to take on e4 now. This wasn't really the plan. But it should be okay for black. What's this? Okay, not clear what's going on here. His king is more vulnerable than mine. Now knight c6 though. It's okay. I guess it's like equal now. I hung my queen. That's good. Okay, that's not equal. Good game, dude. Alright. Amadan. Good game. Too slow. Next game. We're gonna play a rematch against Shakafel. Yeah, Amadan, good game, man. You played well. I'm thinking I'm probably clearly better there, but time. Maybe not clearly better, just slightly better. Let's see. I've been playing just Sicilian. Let's mix it up a little bit. E takes f4 was much stronger, but he had knight takes f6 check, no? He didn't have knight f6 check. I mean, e takes f4 was the main point. That's what I missed. And the actual game, I lost my advantage. You know, when I have to do that. I shouldn't have lost under any circumstances, but with his knight out in limbo on a5. But black is better even there, but I gave away most of my advantage based on having to trade the bishop on e4. So now this position is like an Alekhines defense. I can't really recall how I used to play this. I think bishop a3. Bishop a3 becomes an issue in some lines here. So if I trade and castle, you can play bishop a3 type of ideas. Knight b6. Knight b6 is a similar situation in the Grunfeld. This, I guess, is the old line. I used to play the Alekhines too, but it's been so long. I don't remember this. I think I'm supposed to play like knight a5 and take the bishop. And there are other lines that are kind of similar but not quite the same, with the pawn on d3. That's what I'm thinking of, actually, where white has the pawn on d3 instead of on d4. Here I have more direct counterplay against the d4 pawn. If the pawn's on d3, things are a little different. Yeah. Is it though? Is it the same? Are Wolf, are you confusing the same thing with me? Because I'm also thinking of the line with the pawn on d3. Here. This is really similar to the e3 line of the Grunfeld. I don't know if many of you know what I'm talking about, but if you play e3 in the main line of the Grunfeld, then you exchange on d5 with white and play bishop c4. Black plays knight b6, you play bishop b3, and then black plays c5 and there gets an isolated pawn. But that's different. You know, isolated pawn is different. The piece configuration is the same here, but it can become sort of similar. So it looks a little time consuming to play knight a5, but there's no bishop g4 because the bishop takes f7 check. You have to watch out for that. Castles is fine. I don't really believe white is gonna sack the whole position. But maybe you castle queenside and play h4 if I castle there. So that's why I played knight a5 first. Actually, if you take white's c-pawn off the board, if you take both c-pawns off the board, you have the position from the e3 Grunfeld on the board. The inclusion of the c-pawns, I guess, definitely favors white. He no longer has an isolated pawn on d4. So now we're going to castle.